What is up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News, presented by Sticks.com. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I'm joined, of course, by my wonderful co-host, Michael Augello. And we've got so much to talk about today. The Florida Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Of course, we're going to be talking about that, but that also means the offseason is here. So we've got lots of trade and free agency and draft talk all coming your way as well. Before we do get into all of that, though, do want to remind you that the Wraparound is brought to you by Sticks.com. Why break the bank on sticks when you can get pro level composite sticks without the pro price tag at Sticks.com? That's STIX.com. Head over now and gear up. All right, Mike. Florida Panthers, Stanley Cup champions. I know you're happy because Edmonton has lost again. Obviously, second straight win for the Panthers. They won in a blowout 5-1 in game 6. It's their second title. Sam Bennett wins the Conn Smythe. Of course, he's going to get paid in free agency as if he wasn't already. Now that they've won twice in a row, I think the Panthers can officially enter the dynasty conversation. So, in your opinion, among recent NHL dynasties, teams like Tampa, Pittsburgh, teams like that, where do you think that this Florida Panthers regime sort of ranks? And on that note, do you think that they should be the Cup favorite again going into next season?
Well, if you look at the last, say, 15 years, Chicago won 3 cups, LA won 2, Pittsburgh won 2 in a row. So did Tampa and so did Florida. I would put them sort of middle of the pack. I'd put them maybe third. I think the Chicago teams with Kane and Toews were incredible. And they did, Corey Crawford was not a fantastic goaltender, but they were just so strong up front and so strong on the blue line with Keith and Seabrook. And, I sort of put Tampa on a lower level, not because, I think Buffalo or Toronto would take COVID Stanley Cups, but a lot of people think that the COVID, the bubble, and then the following year there's sort of an asterisk on them. So I would put Florida maybe third behind Chicago and probably the back-to-back Pittsburgh teams from 16 and 17.
Yeah, we'll maybe have to update that conversation if they are the favorite to win again going into next season. I think a lot of people thought that maybe the Oilers might be the favorite this season after they fell just short in the Cup final last year. Of course, didn't happen. They've now lost for the second year in a row. Plenty of questions about what this team needs to do to sort of push back or push themselves over this final kind of barrier in this Cup final, this hurdle that they keep facing. So obviously one of the big looming questions is Connor McDavid. He's set to hit free agency in 2026. Now they've already got Draisaitl locked up. Assuming that, the Oilers want to make a push to re-sign Connor McDavid and keep him here long term. There's definitely been questions, though, about is this team too top heavy? And, if you've already got Draisaitl making the most money in the league right now, that McDavid's going to make even more. Looking now at the Oilers and their cap situation and everything moving forward, is it going to be necessary if Connor McDavid wants to stay in Edmonton and if he wants to win a cup in Edmonton? Do you think that he's going to have to maybe take a more team-friendly deal, or what do you think the future is going to look like for him and the Oilers?
Well, we know that paying 3 players, over $10 million. Now, we know the cap is going up, but we know that when a team like Toronto has paid 4 players more than $10 million, you can't fit a support staff around those players to be able to win. Now, there's obviously some problems and some criticism of the core in Toronto. There isn't any criticism with McDavid and Draisaitl. They're fantastic. They're 2 of the best players in the league, but there just doesn't seem to be the ability of the management, whether it be Ken Holland or Stan Bowman, to address the areas of need with the Oilers. We know what the area of need is. They needed a goaltender at the deadline. They didn't get one. I'm not blaming the loss in the Stanley Cup on Stuart Skinner. They wouldn't have gotten to the Stanley Cup final without Stuart Skinner and with Calvin Pickard playing well. But they weren't good enough to win, and that's the problem. There were goalies out there. They didn't want to pay the price. I understand that. But now, I mean, you're on the clock here. If Connor McDavid does not sign an extension on July 1, July 2, everybody's going to be saying he's going to free agency. And they'd probably be right because he controls his fate. And if it goes to July 1, 2026, I know a certain city north of me that, is going to be going crazy at the prospect of Connor McDavid wearing blue and white and wearing number 97. He can shut that down by signing the contract. Will he? Won't he? That's the big question. But they need to put a support staff around him. And I just don't know whether it's possible because they seem to have not completed that job in the first, 8 years of his career.
Yeah, will definitely be an interesting storyline to keep an eye on. And even if he does hit free agency, thinking that he could make upwards of 16, 17 million. I mean, what teams are, even with the cap going up, what teams are going to have the space? Competitive teams are going to have the space because usually the teams that have that kind of cap space are not anywhere close to being competitive. So will be interesting to see what happens there. Shifting back to Florida, they've got some pending free agents there. Of course, Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand. We've got Aaron Ekblad as well, but I want to focus on the forwards for this conversation. Bennett is in the last year of a 4-year deal at $4.425 million AAV. Marchand finishing the last year of an 8-year deal that he signed with Boston, of course, $6.125 million. Of course, Florida would love to keep both. I'm sure Marchand upped his stock a little bit during these playoffs, even at 37 years old, and Bennett already as a center with proven playoff track record, I think was already going to get paid, and then winning the Conn Smythe only just further confirmed that. So looking at Florida, if you're looking at these two players and then you add in Ekblad as well on the blue line, is it going to be possible to keep them all? And if not, my opinion is that you can keep two. You can't keep all three. Right. So if that's the case, who, Mike, do you think stays? Who do you think goes? And if it's Bennett leaving, if it's Marchand leaving, if it's Ekblad leaving, I mean, where do you think that, could be some potential landing spots for them?
Well, the question that I didn't answer before is whether they would be the contender in the Eastern Conference. They're the leading contender, and they will be, obviously. But it's going to hinge on what Bill Zito does on July 1st, whether he can bring two of these players back. And even if he brings two of these players back, he's got to find other players to fill in the spots. Last year, after Montour and Ekman-Larsson and Lomborg and a few other Stenlund, all after they all left, Steven Lorenz, he was able to plug in players like AJ Greer and Nosek and Nate Schmidt, who was very important on their blue line. I agree with you. Two of the three. They only have $19 million in cap space. They can sign two of them. And if one of them is Bennett is going to have to slot in probably behind Barkov, Reinhart, and Verhaeghe. And that means probably $8 million. If he can get 10, even if it's from a higher tax bracket market, he might, take that deal. If they give him 8 years and spread it out, then maybe he takes that. I think the one most likely to leave is Marchand because he took an 8-year deal with Boston at a low amount. He was trying to get paid at least for 3 more years with Boston. That didn't pan out. He has an opportunity based on the way he played in the playoffs to get a 4-year deal reportedly at over $8 million. So he's not getting that from Florida. And I think, even though there's been talk about them like sort of moving on from Ekblad was the first pick in 2014. If you look at their defense without Ekblad, I just can't imagine it being good enough. Now they'll be able to sign somebody, but he's a tough player to replace. So I think it's going to be Ekblad and probably Bennett staying. But the way things go, they might be only able to sign one of them.
Yeah, it'll all eyes will definitely be on Bill Zito this summer. All right, Mike, we love to talk about drama here on the Wraparound. And so we've got the latest tea out of Toronto is that Mitch Marner, annual All-Star Invitational charity event that he has every year, canceled. It runs in Toronto every year, did not happen this year. Of course, the event would feature lots of NHL players, other celebrities, and it was to raise money for Marner's Assist Foundation. The event is no longer listed on the foundation's website. So, with that in mind, we are now, I think we had all sort of arrived at the conclusion already that Marner's time in Toronto was done. This sort of further confirms that. But what do you make of this? The animosity, I think that it seems that Marner has toward Toronto. And what do you make of all this latest drama in the saga?
If somebody pays me $66 million over the last 6 years, I would be thankful. I don't know whether it's the organization or the fan base. I know that Steve Simmons from the Toronto Sun wrote a very good column yesterday about Marner and how, with him obviously leaving, because I think it's been clear that he was going to leave from the time that he did not waive the no move clause to go to Carolina in a Rantanen deal. Simmons basically said he could be the most unpopular former Leaf, and that shouldn't have happened. He's a Toronto kid. He always wanted to be a Maple Leaf. He was drafted 4th overall. He's, if he stayed with the Leafs, he probably would have been the all-time leading point getter. Matthews doesn't get as many points, but he'll probably break Matt Sundin his goal record. Everything pointed toward Marner being one of the more, popular players in that franchise. And based on the way he sort of has interacted with the media, based on his negotiations with the team previously, like it's not one thing, it's been a number of things. And I think the whole reason that the charity event was canceled is because there is a pall over him right now, and it's a pall of negativity. And I think they just didn't want to deal with that because, you're going to hold a charity event like 3 days after you've signed a 7-year deal with Arizona or with Utah or Anaheim. I don't think that would have been the best. So maybe they delay it for a year. Maybe it completely goes away. But I just think that was the reason why there was an aura of negativity that was going to be upon it.
Yeah, definitely interesting times up there in Toronto. Will be interesting to see how free agency goes for him. Now let's talk about another fun one. Jonathan Toews making his return to the NHL, or says that he says that he plans to. List of potential teams, has spanned cast a wide net, I think, at first, but now reportedly it's down to just 2 teams. So the Colorado Avalanche and the Winnipeg Jets. So if Toews is serious about making his NHL return, which we have every reason to believe he is, and if these are the 2 teams that are, in the final running to enlist his services, which do you think would be the better fit? Or is there another third team not listed here that you think might be a better fit?
Of those 2 teams, I mean, it's been discussed for years about him going to his hometown, which is Winnipeg, especially coming off a President's Trophy season and, them going to the second round. The thought of him going anywhere but Winnipeg would sort of it wouldn't be a great narrative. I'm just saying it would be fantastic. He's going back to his hometown. They need him because Adam Lowry is probably going to be out early in the season. He could plug in. If you look at Colorado, I mean, Colorado is a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, But up the middle, after signing Brock Nelson, now you have McKinnon, you have Brock Nelson, you have Ross Colton, you have, they're loaded up the middle. So I think the best fit would be Winnipeg. I'm rooting for it to be Winnipeg. And the only other team, that I had heard mentioned in regards to him was Tampa. But I don't think that that's realistic. So if I'm going to vote on one of the two, I would say the Winnipeg Jets.
And Winnipeg notoriously doesn't have the easiest time landing free agents, so it could be a real blessing for them too. All right, let's talk about the Olympics. The 2026 hockey schedule was released, so we've got the 3 groups. Let's just read through them real quickly here. Group A, Canada, Czechia, Switzerland, and France. Group B, Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, and Italy. And Group C, USA, Germany, Latvia, and Denmark. So of these teams, obviously, we had Sweden, Finland, Canada, USA, all involved in the 4 nations face-off earlier this year. But of those remaining teams that were not involved in the 4 nations, Mike, any that you see on this list who could maybe make some noise at the Olympics?
Well, Switzerland is always a difficult team. They play a really strict defensive style. They always play close games. They're a tough out. I don't know if they'll win the gold medal, but I think they'll be very challenging, especially in the group play. And they could very easily go further than that. We know Czechia has stars like Pasternak, so they could be a challenge. Germany is a rising power. You have Draisaitl, you have JJ Peterka. He wasn't selected to the top 6, but he's going to be on the team. Stützle. So there are some good players, and Germany is rising. But I would say of the ones that were not in the 4 nations face-off, I would say Switzerland, with maybe Czechia number 2.
Yeah, Czechia winning the world championship a couple years, or was it last year too? So definitely could be interesting there. Now here's an interesting one. Let's talk about Thatcher Demko. Because up in Vancouver, it's an interesting situation they've landed in, sort of kind of fell into almost accidentally with Kevin Lingan. He was just extended for 5 years, $4.5 million AAV. He's got a full no move clause. And then, of course, we've got playoff hero from last year, Artur Shilovs, who's coming. He's dominating in the AHL right now in the Calder Cup playoffs for Abbotsford. Demko, of course, has dealt with his injury issues on and off for the last couple of seasons. In the games that he did play this past season, 23 games, he had an .889 save percentage. Again, very injury prone, entering the final year of his contract with the $5 million AAV. That said, do you think that, the narrative around him about maybe being, a core piece in Vancouver has shifted, and that they might be looking to trade him?
Hello, Mr. Bowman. I'll just say, Thatcher Demko has been an excellent goaltender. The injuries have really affected his career. I think if he was healthy, he would be a cornerstone piece that they would never trade. With Lankinen signed to the long-term deal, with Svilovs playing as well as he did last year in the playoffs and now playing well in Abbotsford, you've got a situation where I don't think you're going to re-sign Demko. If you trade him, you might be able to get some value back. If you don't get value back, then you just keep him. Jim Rutherford is never going to trade, and Patrick Alvin are just not going to trade him for nothing. But if they can get value for him, I think he's probably going to be dealt, because it's a situation where I think they have the goaltending taken care of, and they'll need that $5 million in cap space. It's just a question of whether any team out there will roll the dice that Demko can stay healthy and at least be a tandem goaltender. That's why I'm joking about Edmonton, but it would make sense for them to although I don't know if Vancouver is going to trade inside their division, but a team that is looking for that goaltender. Hello, Carolina, looking for that goaltender that can put them over the top. If he's right, if he's healthy, this is a guy who could do it. But those two questions are very big.
Very big. And I think, whatever kind of start to the season he has here with Vancouver is going to be very, very telling, very important in terms of his health and therefore his trade value. All right. New York Islanders shock the world. They get the number 1 pick in the draft with a brand new GM. Mike, is there a scenario that the Islanders pick anyone other than Matthew Schaefer at number 1?
That was the talk of the combine, that could they take James Higgins, who's from Long Island? Could they go with Michael Misa? It doesn't sound like that's going to happen. All the talk at the combine was it was a fait accompli that Schaefer is going to be drafted by the Islanders. He's even working out with I think it was Adam Pelech, to get ready for the NHL season. If they pick him number 1 overall, he's probably going to not go back. He's going to play for the Islanders. So, I mean, all those signals and the way he talked at the combine, I don't see any other avenue that they would go down other than Schaefer. I mean, the only one that was conceivable was bowing to the pressure of taking the Long Island boy and taking Higgins, but I don't think that's going to happen. So Schaefer is going to be the pick.
Yeah, definitely big for the Islanders as well, who can use some help on their blue line too in the next couple of years. All right. News out of Nashville, or I guess more specifically out of Switzerland. Roman Josi said that he is dealing with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and I am hoping as a non-medical professional that I pronounced that correctly. It's a condition that causes your heart rate to increase very quickly when standing up from either a seated position or a lying down position. So Josi he also said in this interview with a Swiss publication, he's been going through therapy, made some lifestyle changes, going to be, still feels fully confident that he'll be 100% ready to go to compete not only with Nashville, but also with the Swiss national team with the Olympics. He was named as one of the first 6 to their roster. No real surprise there. But Roman Josi, he missed the last, quarter plus of the season after suffering a head injury, actually concussed on a hit from Sam Bennett, funny enough. So I think that, this is not his first rodeo with head injury, excuse me. We know that head injuries are cumulative in nature. Looking at his future, again, at 34, 35 years old, not as young as he once was. Looking at Nashville now and how this might affect their offseason plans, do you think that this puts even more pressure on Barry Trotz to try and shore up the blue line in Nashville now? I mean, obviously we've known that Roman Josi isn't going to be around forever, but this almost sort of is like a gentle nudge, gentle reminder of that fact that he will not be here forever. So looking at that and looking at obviously what a disappointing season Nashville just had, I mean, what do you think Barry Trotz should be prioritizing here as he heads into the offseason?
Even if Roman Josi was 100% healthy, the blue line, the state of the blue line, and this is well chronicled by you, Emma, that their right side of their blue line is non-existent. And, that has to be the focus. Now, unless they're going to get in the Aaron Ekblad sweepstakes, there are a couple others that they could go out and sign. Maybe they would be the receptacle for a Matt Dumba or an Ilya Lyubushkin from Dallas. They're right shot defensemen, but they're not top 4 guys. I mean, I think their defense is sort of in chaos. Josi, we all hope he's 100%. And Brady Shea was a really good signing, but he's 31 years old. There's no youth. There's a couple younger players that I think aren't ready to sort of jump into that type of role. If they're going to improve their blue line, they're probably going to have to improve it via free agency or trade. And that's a tough road to hoe. I mean, you're giving up a lot of prospects or draft picks. I can only cite the example of Buffalo and Toronto. Buffalo traded Casey Middlestat, a first-round pick, for Bowen Byram. The Leafs traded multiple first-round picks at the deadline, one of them for Brandon Carlo. They signed Chris Tanev in free agency. It's costly to go out and get right shot defensemen. It's costly to get top 4 defensemen. And that's the price that Barry Trotz is probably going to have to pay if he improves his blue line in Nashville.
Definitely. Yeah. It definitely says something when your most tenured member of your blue line this at the end of the season this year was Brady Shea, the guy that they signed in July. So definitely got some work to do there. And I think that this only magnifies that. All right. Stanley Cup is behind us officially in the off season. So of course we've got to make some way too early predictions for 2026, Mike. That's where I want to wrap up today. We talked about, you, I think, alluded to it earlier. You going with Florida again as your favorite for the Stanley Cup again?
Definitely. I mean, it all depends on who they sign. If they bring back all 3, I think everybody's going to be taking them as a 3-time Cup winner. Now we don't know. Matthew Tkachuk, after the game yesterday, said he had a sports hernia and a torn adductor muscle. So, who knows how long he's going to be out. You don't know what the next season and the accumulation of injuries. But right now, anybody is going to be saying Florida is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup next year.
All right. Yeah. Hard to argue with that after the show that they put on here, and really just kind of embarrassing Edmonton. All right. So Hart Trophy next year. This year it was Connor Hellebuck. Who do you think next year?
I'll go with Connor McDavid in his final year before he leaves Edmonton, just to set the stage for being the highest paid player in the NHL. I just have this weird feeling he's not going to sign an extension on July 1, and then he's going to put up 145 or 150 point season and say, okay, folks, pay me.
Definitely. All right, Vezina. Goalie chatter has been interesting. Again, with Hellebuck winning that, but we've seen that he's had some difficulty coming up big in the big moments. So Vezina next year, who you got?
I don't think it'll be Hellebuck for the 3rd time in a row. I'll go with Jake Ottinger. I know that he did not get the vote of approval by his head coach, but that guy is gone, and I think he'll. Let's just say I think he'll give his new coach, whoever it is, a present with a Vezina Trophy win.
All right. Yeah, definitely. And that would be the ultimate icing on the cake, I think, after Pete DeBoer's exit from Dallas. All right. Teams that made the playoffs this year, any of them that you think are going to miss the playoffs next year?
This is tough. I would probably I will go out on a limb and say the Vegas Golden Knights. A lot of age there, a lot of injuries there. Usually they shake things up in the summer. The goaltending with Adin Hill was not great. It would be a dramatic drop, but I think there's a possibility they could fall out of it.
All right. I don't know. I might go maybe St. Louis. I don't know. It feels silly to count them out after the hot streak they went on at the end of the year, but I don't know. It could kind of go either way for me. And the Central Division is a juggernaut. So I don't know. I would maybe go with St. Louis, but Vegas is an interesting pick too. Yeah. All right. Flip side now. A team that missed the playoffs this year, who you think will make the playoffs next year?
I mean, this is low-hanging fruit. I'm taking the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, plus I think, they've already added Kreider. They added a Stanley Cup winning coach in Quenneville. I think they're one of the 2 or 3 teams that Mitch Marner could go to if they add him. Then I think that with all the young talent that they have, I think that they have an excellent chance to make the playoffs as a wild card, or maybe even the top 3 in the Pacific.
Yeah, have to agree with you there. Stole it right out from under me. I think that the Anaheim Ducks just got a lot more exciting this offseason between the coaching hire and the new pieces that they're adding. So will be an interesting maybe shakeup in the Pacific. Might be kind of a nice change. It's been, maybe we won't get Edmonton, LA for the 15th year in a row, it feels like, in the first round of the playoffs. So definitely something to watch for there. But if those things end up happening, you heard it here first. And if not, then we never said that. But for now, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. Thank you again, Mike, for joining me. As always, thank you again to Sticks.com for sponsoring as well. We will be back with an all-new episode next week. We'll see you then.